Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. That was Bye Bye Blackbird, arranged by Mark Taylor. This is our fourth episode in the series of 6 here with Terry White, where we're looking at grade 1 to grade 3 repertoire for you.
Yeah, Bye Bye Blackbird's a great chart. It's very accessible for a good, solid middle school band. Great sight reading material for high school. And one of those charts you should just have in your book for those occasions when a high school group has playing for the senior citizens or the community. Teaches the great Basie style, and
to play that well though is not it's not an easy chart. That's a hard two.
I recently this summer I covered an adult jazz history class for Mike Sakash, and it was about Basie, and we were talking about the style and how to achieve it. And I referenced a story that Don Doan had told me when he was on the road with Maynard Ferguson back in the 60s. He had a couple of weeks off, so he subbed on the Basie band. And Don's a great musician, but the Maynard band was on the front part of the beat, where Basie's band was behind the beat. Mm-hmm. And Don would say, I tried to almost drag, and I still felt like I was rushing. So you could take a chart like this where the kids aren't so focused on the technical challenges of the chart, mm-hmm. and they can actually listen to what's going on around. And the few times I've had to clinic this, that's the style I tell the kids in the rhythm section. You're going to lay down the time, and the horns, you're going to try to get the rhythm section to drag, but rhythm section, you're not going to allow that to happen. They start thinking and listening more to each other, and you get them to lay back, and then you can carry that on to other styles, other charts,
yep.
About laying back. But there's been some funny interpretations of that particular style, but this chart's just beautiful.
Yeah, a little bit of piano stuff too. I've done that with a kind of a newer piano, but they're a classical piano player, so all that stuff's pretty written out. That works well on that chart.
And even though they can, they might have the chops to do both hands. Mm-hmm. There are times Basie only played with his right hand or his left hand. Yeah. You could have him just play the right hand on this chart, just to see how that works for you.
Speaking of ballads, actually there's 2 charts that we're not featuring because we couldn't get the video portion to happen of it, but I suggest people check out. First, let's just talk for a second about your chart, Past My Bedtime.
Yeah, that was like the second chart I ever had published. That came from a much more difficult chart I had done for my big band. It was just an original, and it was about just laying back, a little dial-in style. One of the things I recommend to directors, if they've been teaching, more than 10 years, more than 20 years, you might need to have some fresher material as well. Mm-hmm. You can only teach a little dial-in so many times before mentally you're probably jarring. Yeah. You're getting lazy. You've heard it so many times. And you almost know exactly where the point is the kid's going to mess up, mm-hmm. and you almost tell him before he gets the chance to mess it up. So if you get some material in the same vein, I think it keeps the director, fresh.
I think there's another chart here right afterwards that we couldn't, again, if people go listen to, you can't, but we can't do the score and sound for you. This is St. James Infirmary, arranged by Tom Davis. Mm-hmm. I found this chart a couple of years ago. It starts with a cappella trombone section, very bluesy. And the chart's just awesome. It's like a contemporary take on the tune, but also still very traditional. It's in the Green cover series, so it's kind of on the harder 2 level, but it's a great traditional jazz tune, as people probably know. And if they don't know the tune, they should check it out. So the Tom Davis arrangement is really good.
It's a very cool ensemble section towards the end too.
Yeah.
Very neat. And again, it's a tune kids should be familiar with, not so much in terms of jazz repertoire, but jazz history.
Yep. Yeah, and that part at the end you're talking about is, I think, kind of almost like a 12/8 kind of swing thing. Mm-hmm. All right, the next tune we're going to look at is a great ballad on the. Who did the big arrangement of "Here's That Rainy Day"? That's Dave Bardoon, right? Or D. Barton. D. Barton, right? That's like the grade 5 in D flat or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's a Rick Stitzel version of "Here's That Rainy Day," which everything's written out. There's some solos written out and stuff. This is a great grade 2 ballad. It kind of moves along and also allows students to hear some historical tune as well. So let's take a listen to Here's That Rainy Day, arranged by Rick Stitzel. That Here's That Rainy Day chart is such a great chart. I mean, I remember tuning those opening concert Cs, and we were using flugels and everything, and it's just great, Stan Kenton literature, but for the young band.
And again, a great way to introduce Stan Kenton to middle school kids, because they're not going to see this only by accident. And I think we really owe it to them from a historical standpoint to introduce these big bands.
Can I correct something? You said middle school kids. There's a lot of high school kids who should play this.
Oh, and music teachers.
Yeah.
The adult class that I mentioned, they were roughly my age, or given a few years. And I asked how many people had seen the Basie Band live. Not a one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, people I've seen Basie multiple times live, but thank God for YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So the Kenton Band it's really important because it's a different type of jazz than say Basie. It's a very orchestrated jazz.
All right, our next chart is arranged by Michael Sweeney. This one's a great chart on Afro Blue. I've actually done this chart without the 4-bar intro, but also with it as is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, it's been a challenge sometimes to teach kids how to play in 3/4 without it sounding, hammering on 1 all the time. It just plods through. But this chart really works. You get the kids to sort of lighten up a little bit on that.
Yep.
Just think 1, 2, 3, 1 instead of 1, 2, 3, 1.
And a chart like this too, if you have a drummer who's not super comfortable yet, like even if they just play ride cymbal,
Right.
the chart works. They don't have to play the whole drum set.
Correct. Right. You don't have to thump bass drum on 1 and hi-hat
Yeah.
on 2 and 3.
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah, all
chart.
right. Let's check it out. Here's Afro Blue arranged by Michael Sweeney.
Yeah, it's a very hip. The introductions is very cool, and throughout the chart, I think we mentioned it earlier on Jive Samba and some other things that, good writers will use those tensions, those ninths, and have those dissonances. But it does present some challenges in terms of playing in tune. But it's very important. Makes a difference in that chart. And what I like too is the parts are authentically notated to play in that style. I mean, there are a lot of Latin charts out there that just Latin. Well, that's huge. And I'm
That's
on,
like saying food.
yeah, and I'm on pins and needles sometimes. My latest chart that just came out is Latin, and I just hope that Michelle Fernandez is authorizes everything I did to be authentic, not sound like some guy from Maine trying to write Latin. So that's what's nice about this chart. The kids play the part,
Yeah.
it'll sound appropriate.
And there's room for some auxiliary percussion in there too if you have
Mhm.
more percussionists.
Right.
So again, that tune could be a second tune. That tune could be a third tune.
Mhm.
Probably even a first tune. Yeah. Okay. Next tune is another Mike Cummuff arrangement. We on another episode did the tune "Sticks," which is a 14-bar blues. This one is a tune that's also Latin jazz, or it's like a straight ahead jazz, but then it goes to swing as well. This is called "Sack of Woe," which, along with John Mackey's "Asphalt Cocktail," are two of my favorite titles I've ever heard. I'm not sure what a sack of woe really is, but it's kind of refers to some sad times, I guess.
I would think that's a Cannonball tune, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess the terminology back then, for us today is a little bizarre, but yeah, the sack of woe is the whole "woe is me" type thing. So in a bag full of it, you're carrying all your baggage with you. So
All right, let's check it out here. "Sack of Woe," arranged by Mike Cummuff. It's kind of got like that Surfing USA vibe to it. One thing I've noticed, it is a grade 2, but it's a long chart. I mean, it's 4.5 minutes. If you do, I think when I did it, I took that shout chorus once instead of twice.
Well, it's a 60s tune.
Yep.
That's my generation. It's when I was a kid. We just mentioned in passing that very rarely do we ever play a recording of the chart prior to the kids initially reading it. But here's a case where if you played that chart, they would probably get the articulations, not even knowing they were doing that would be very helpful for them.
Yeah.
And not even say anything, just play the chart and see what happens.
One thing you can do on this chart too, I believe there's a Sack of Woe solo out there by Cannonball that's transcription that's not very hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen people do that chart, but insert that transcription and have the whole saxophone section play that.
Mm-hmm.
Just a great chance to play some Cannonball language.
I think with any transcribed solo, you don't necessarily have to play the entire solo.
Yeah.
I mean, good soloists start, they save the good stuff for the end. So,
Yeah.
You can do some things from the beginning of the solos.
Yeah, do a chorus, do the
Sure.
first chorus.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's an overall thing. Like if you're doing a standard tune, always look at the recordings and you go and listen to the original solos. And if you think you can do it, try to find the transcription.
Yeah, go online. Again, in one of our earlier episodes, we talked about get on email and ask your friends. Does anybody have any of these solos
Mm-hmm.
that are out there that you might not find online? Because some of you might have one in their file cabinet,
Yep.
like
Yep.
like the Pedito chart that I spent many hours transcribing that opening thing, and then Chris Holzer said, "Geez, I've got that in my file cabinet." So it pays to put
Ask.
that request out there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. All right, we have 2 more charts left on this episode. The next one is from Sound of Music, My Favorite Things, arranged by Paul Murtha. Great writer over in concert band as well as jazz band. This one's an F minor. I've done this one a couple times because it's just great for 3/4, right? Just
Mhm.
getting kids to play in 3 is a whole thing.
It is.
And the solo section is pretty basic. I think what is it? F minor, D flat. And then I know it moves through the cycle after that, but they can basically stay in F minor throughout. And if they know the tune, they can improvise off that.
And you might want to have them avoid initially listening to the Coltrane version, because that's
Yes.
going to be totally different.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the one everyone goes to.
Mhm.
That's the most iconic version of this tune in a jazz idiom, anyway.
Yeah. And what's great too is if you use it, I mean, not only is it 3/4, but the parents know it. People know it.
Mhm.
And it's a way to teach them that Ariana Grande did not write this song. She just covered it. So, all right, let's check it out. My Favorite Things, arranged by Paul Murtha. Also prepare yourself for the trumpets to miss E flat like the first 6 times it comes up on that one.
Well, there's a case like the earlier Mike Sweeney chart and Mark Taylor's chart. A good writer will not stay away from using tensions. It's very hip sounding. I mean, there's some challenges for the director in terms of, getting the kids to understand what their role is. Back in college, Herb Pomeroy would always point out to somebody, the lower half of lower part in the half step. There's a play up to it, so we hear it. Kids sometimes will back away because they think the note sounds wrong to them, and so it'll sound even worse if they back away. But when played well, those charts sound so hip, and they're not. It's not technically hard; they just sound so cool.
And obviously, that one featured the trumpets. So if you have a young trumpet section, that might not be the chart for you. But I
Mhm.
mean, because the GD, that jump a lot, that's going to be crack
Right.
city unless they're
Sure.
decent players.
Sure.
So
Yep. I mean, everybody's situation is different, and every year it varies. I mean,
Mhm.
we can always say probably globally we struggle with trombones, and so we tend to pick our music, to deal with those weaknesses. Um, Trumpets sometimes, saxes. We always try to go after the sax solis and all of that stuff. So you you build your library, and you're not going to use these charts maybe next year, but it could be the year after. If they're in your library, they're accessible. You could try them. Gee, that worked out better than I thought, and let's go with it. But I think some of us need to get away from the three tune mentality that and that a lot of that has to do with rehearsal time. I
Mhm.
get that, but I think if you're planning ahead and planning for beyond festival season, have a couple of charts that are easy. I know my kids at Cape Middle School, Mr. White, we're going to do a gig, whether it was just playing for the senior citizens or in the mornings before school, we would play in the alcove of the corridors as the kids were coming to school. And the kids dug it. And the kids listening to the jazz band kids, they were rock stars. But the charts had to be relatively, easy that we
Mhm.
could put together. So I think it's important, build the book up.
The last chart we're going to listen to for this session, again, if you've enjoyed this, check out the other ones as well. We have one at grade 1, one at grade 2, 2 of these at grade 2.5. So I guess that would be 3 at grade 2, wouldn't it? That would be how that math works. And then we have 2 that are going to be in the grade 3 and 3.5 as well. This last one, again, is by Mike Kamuff. This is of the Green series. This is his tune on his chart on Freddie Hubbard's tune, Little Sunflower. What's great about Little Sunflower is that it's two chords. The A section is D minor, and the bridge is E flat minor. So it's great for improvisation. I used a vocalist on this once,
Mhm.
and it's great. Again, it's a longer chart, so if you hear it and you want to do it, you could even look at how you could make it a little bit shorter. I mean, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that's something to think about. I mean, just looking at the YouTube video, it's 5 minutes long,
Mhm.
right? So,
Sure.
but it's a great chart.
Yeah, in terms of programming, 5 minutes isn't long on a program, but
But
rehearsal time,
but if you have young trumpet players and they're
sure.
playing on a 5-minute tune,
Right.
for some bands, that's 2.5 minutes too long.
Yeah, it is. And again, this chart and the particular tune we were talking about previously about those added tensions to the writing that make it sound so hip. To me, it would be very vanilla sounding if we had to remove those because we're afraid they weren't going to be played correctly. So
What I like about this chart is the feel that he uses. It's not straight ahead bossa. It's like, if I remember correctly, it's kind of like a halftime funk kind of groove in there. So here's Little Sunflower, arranged by Mike Kamuff. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.